Stihl is Australia's most trusted brand of garden power tools, backed by 95 years of German engineering excellence. To get your hands on their range, visit your local Stihl dealer today or visit stihl.com.au.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Garden Gurus Live show. I'm Joanne and it's a pleasure to be here on this lovely Friday morning. We have a very exciting show lined up for you today. We've got some very special Garden Guru collection of plants to show you from our good friends at Garden Express. We'll also be enjoying the spring season of the latest show of the Garden Gurus TV. So stay seated and we'll show you a sneak peek of the great new episode airing tomorrow. Get those garden gloves ready and I'll do my best to help answer as many gardening questions as possible. Later on, I'll also share my plant of the week. I thought this week we'd talk about pond plants. And as always, those gardening questions will give you a chance to win a prize. So make sure you include the location to help me best answer your questions. And please share the love around and hit the like button. So we're also going to be joined by David from our friends at Garden Express to discuss their Dahlia collection. So I think we'll go straight over to them now and we'll have a chat with Dave at Garden Express. Morning, David.
Good morning, Joanne. How are you going?
Very well, very well.
Wonderful. We're having a beautiful spring day here and it's a pleasure to be on talking with you.
That's fantastic. We're having a little bit of a hot day here today. So next week it goes cooler again, which I'm really pleased for. I think the hots come in just a little bit fast for me. So today you've got this amazing collection of dahlias at a price that I can't believe.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Look, I love dahlias. I grew up as a kid. Our farm was geared around growing dahlias as the major crop. So it's been part of my life the whole time. And we're still growing them. We've got a farm. My brother's a grower of dahlias and we've also got a collection as well. So it's a real pleasure to be able to bring you one of my favorite products. And we have this pack of 9 beautiful varieties for only $50.
Which is crazy. Absolutely
crazy.
And they're a fabulous array of different colours and shapes that you've got in there too. David, can I ask where you grow them? Is it north of Melbourne?
We're in the outer east, Joanne. So in the Yarra Valley.
Okay. So do you get much frost out there?
We do get frosts, but for dahlias in the southern climates, they do go dormant. In the northern climates, they can sort of hang on to their foliage a little bit longer. But you really have like a long summer flowering period for them. So, a plant that's been in the ground from last year will start to flower a bit before Christmas and all the way through till those frosts late in April.
So would you suggest, David, that people living in a more frost-prone area should dig them up? Or are you selling varieties that do really well in that frosted area?
Look, all of the dahlia varieties that we sell, they're a tuberous rhizome or tuber, and they clump up and you can leave them for, probably 3 to 4 years. What happens after a few years is they tend to get so big that the inner tubers can get a little bit of rot. So it won't be the frost that gets them. It will be the excess moisture if they're in a lower part of the garden.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I've always thought that you needed to lift them, but then when you look at the tubers, they're much finer and smaller. Whereas when I saw those a minute ago on the clip, they're a much heavier tuber that looks like it's going to survive well.
Yeah. So they can get a little bit lazy. Your smaller tubers, they're a lot more energetic than sort of a big lazy tuber. But that volume gives you the extra flowers. So leaving your dahlia in at least for a second season is when you're going to get those really prime number of blooms over a season. I'm talking hundreds of blooms, So a third year is pretty good. Then they start to get really difficult to divide. So if you keep your dahlia in for 3 or 4 years, you really need to jam a screwdriver down the middle and rip it open and work really hard to get the multiplication out of it.
Tough things. So you could grow these in a decent sized pot too, couldn't you?
Yeah, I would call it more of a tub than a pot.
Yeah.
We've grown them before, like in a 20 centimetre pot, and you get a really nice tuber, but that would just be for 1 year. But if you were to get a terracotta planter or something like that, maybe a 30 centimetre wide bulb with a bit of depth, you could successfully grow them on a patio for a couple of seasons as well.
Or even a 40 or 50, like a big tub, and grow 3 or 4 varieties in the one. That would be stunning.
Yeah, and if you plant them like against each other, they will come up intertwined, and it will look like a bush that's got 4 different colours on it. It would be special.
That would be fantastic. Look, I think anyone looking for dahlias, it's a fabulous buy at $50 for 9. You're not going to get that anywhere. So I think if you want them, get your order in straight away, and you guys will get those out straight away to people. You better get them in very quickly, ready for the bloom. But I can see an amazing plant on your desk there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, this is one of my most prized possessions. It's called Hippeastrum doublet. It's a Cybista variety, and I've been waiting for a few years, almost 5 years, to get some of these. Got them through the quarantine system, and now we're just going to release a very small number, actually only about 20 of them. I don't have many. I can't get any more, but it is absolutely exquisite. I'm just going to pop it right up to the screen there.
Yeah, stunning.
So, yeah,
I mean, even if you've not grown Hippeastrums before, but you like something really rare and unusual. And hippies are tough too, aren't they? Ooh, is that what they come in?
Hippies are really hardy, and they like they're all climates in Australia. They actually like a warmer climate for a longer flowering period. In the really warm climates, they'll stay green all year long. In South Australia, we noticed the Hippeastrums coming up quite early, so probably about October. Here in Victoria, we don't get them until sort of the end of November into flower. But exquisite, lots of different colours available, and this one's pretty special.
That one's really special, and you've got 20 for those people that are really keen to get one. So go on the website. Is it on the website, or are they going to need to contact Garden Express?
No, it will be on the website. We just want to tease everybody with it. There'll be a few more available next year, but just in these really low numbers as we wait for it to make some babies so I can sustain the crop, so to speak. So Rowan said we're going to put it up, in the next few days. Probably release it first to our real enthusiasts who have acquired a lot of the specialty hippies. We have a range of specialty hippies called Cybistas, and they're online for sale now as well.
Great. So this week we've got dahlias at a ridiculously low price, and you've also got some really rare and unusual things for those specialty people.
Yeah, there's a lot going on at this time of year. As you know, of course, it's spring, so spring's a really good season for us and a really nice time to get back out into your garden. And
it's kind of hard to choose what plant to bring on each week, isn't it, at this time of the year? It's like, well, I could do 10 or 12 of them.
I know, right? I know, so much fun. But I just also wanted to mention that dahlias, over the time, a lot of people really nostalgic about dahlias and their parents in England, that's one of the biggest comments I ever got was that, my dad my grandpa used to grow them. But dahlias have now become the most Instagrammable flower in the world.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
So many different varieties, shapes, forms, styles. And of course, flowering for such a long period of time, people are really getting behind it. It's a great product, and we're really proud to be growing so many of them. Yeah,
well done. Can you just show me that tin again, David? I'm really interested in what you held up there.
So this is the doublet. The bulbs inside the tin. We just made a beautiful little wrap. Van Berkel's family's turning 70 in Australia next year, so we've bought this tin out as one of our little complimentary things for some of our products during the year. So we decided to use it on this beautiful doublet for its first release.
Well worth it. Well, congratulations on the 70th coming up. We have our 30th coming up next year, so maybe we should get together and party on with our dahlias and hippies.
Party sounds like a great idea. I'm always up for a party.
David, really appreciate your time this morning, and I know I can speak for the country who's looking at this. It's a fabulous deal with the dahlias, and what a beautiful hippeastrum. Congratulations. I know how hard it is to get these things into the country. It's not just waiting 6 months for the boat to dock. It's many years. It's a long process, and I really appreciate people like yourself who bring in the unusual things.
Sometimes it works really well, and sometimes you get some heartache. We had put a little piece together a few weeks ago on a similar variety called Evergreen, and we had 500 bulbs come in, and 490 of them turned to mush, and I'll be lucky to save a dozen of those. But they're the ups and downs of the process, and we've got to keep going, because when you have one that comes good like this, it's just so exciting.
Well, look, congratulations, and thanks very much for today. And we'll speak to you, I take it, next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joanne, for your time.
Thanks, David. Guys, get onto that. It's that's quite a deal. $50 for 9 bulbs, or 9 tubers at least, is really good. All right, so let's move on now, and we'll answer as many questions as we can this morning. Teresa has a picture attached with her palmetto lawn, has patches, has a lawn patch that gets a lot of wear and tear from a puppy that wasn't planned when laying the lawn a year ago, and would love some advice on bringing it back this spring. Right, well, there's a lot of things you can do. Palmetto is actually known, it's a really good grass, and it's known, it's a broad-leafed, soft, now I'm going to completely forget what I was going to say. Buffalo, thank you. So it's a soft buffalo. So it's a really good grass to have, especially if you've got children, or it's a high used area. So it's usually quite tough. Now it's one of the lowest growing of the grasses. So you want to cut it around about between 2 and 5 centimetres in the growing season, and keep it slightly higher in the warm season, around about 5 to 7 centimetres. I think what I'd be doing, it looks to me like it's going to cover quite nicely. You've still got some root system going through even on the bare patches. So what I'd do, Teresa, is I'd probably look for a product. I'm not sure where you're from, unfortunately, but I know in Perth we have a product called Lawn Maximizer. And it's a very good, excuse me, please. It's a very good product to put over top of the patches, and the grass will grow extremely fast into it. So I would look at that. Make sure that the aeration is good in your soil, that it's not too compact from that puppy and everyone else chasing the puppy across that lawn. So make sure that it's got good aeration. And also there's not a lot of point putting anything on it if it's not absorbing, if it's not absorbing the water. If it's hydrophobic, it's not going to work for you. So you're much better to make sure that you get some wetting agent onto it first. Drive that wetting agent in really deep so that the roots follow it down and that they don't sit up high. Quite often, if the roots are not driven down deep and you've got high sitting roots, the sun and the heat will damage them, but also the cold will damage them. So let's drive those roots down, get some wetting agent on it if you need to, cover it with something, or cover the patches and lightly cover the area of the grass with something like Lawn Maximizer, and it should come back quite nicely. Make sure that you mow it and not too high, not too low at least in the summertime. So good luck with that. I hope that comes back for you. Jill has sent in a picture, and my daughter lives in Sydney and is worried about her heliconias, which were planted in landscapers 12, I'm sorry, the picture may not come up for you, so I will describe it, okay? My daughter lives in Sydney and is worried about her heliconias, which were planted by landscapers 12 months ago. They are so lush, but now look brown and really struggling. They're sending up new shoots. I have sent this photo and would like your opinion, please. Okay, so I can see the photo. And your heliconias are brown, and they're brown around the edges. Now, I would suggest, even in Sydney, if you've had a cold, wet winter, which you did have a very wet winter, it could well be that these are overwatered, that they've got too much water in them, or that the soil isn't well enough drained. And so the water, the plant the roots are sitting in water, and it could well be that. And the way you can tell that is if you're brown, if the margins are brown and they're brown and crisp, then it's underwatering. If it's brown and soft, then it's overwatering. So that may well be it. Check that you haven't got any little black spots on it. That could be a fungal issue that will come in after the fact that you've had a wet winter, and some things, the soil just hasn't. There we go. Thanks very much, Stephen. Our tech guys got it up for us. So you can see the brown on the edges of those leaves. It's quite badly damaged. I would wait for some of those lovely new shoots to come up, and then perhaps start trimming off the old leaves, but leave the older leaves until you see that the new shoots are coming through nicely. They should come away really well. Quite jealous of the fact that you can grow heliconias so well in Sydney. We don't get them here as much. All right, so Lorraine I've bought a unit in an over 55s village in Wanneroo. So Wanneroo is it's part of Perth, but it's one of the very northern suburbs of Perth along the coast. The garden in front of my unit faces north. I'm allergic to bees and need to plant foliage plants that provide all year round interest. Can you please advise me? Yes, absolutely. It's a shame that you're allergic to bees. And one thing I usually say, although people that are allergic to bees, I can understand why you'd feel this way. But the more flowers that are in your garden, the more the bees are going to be attracted, but they're also more interested in the flowers than what they are of you. I guess the problem can be is, I know my grandchildren sometimes run out on the lawn. One of them did last week and got stung by a bee that was too heavy with pollen. Or if you're gardening or cleaning up something in your garden and you reach into it and you haven't noticed, then someone allergic to the bee is a problem for you. So the sort of things that you can grow, there's lots of different things, and the foliage colours can be really beautiful. There's a plant called Alternanthera, and it's a beautiful ground cover, and you can get all sorts of colours. More recently, they've brought out this burgundy leaf, and it's a small, low-growing one. Alternanthera Little Ruby is what it's called, and it's got this beautiful bronze-coloured flower, leaf at least. And then you can also get green and yellow, a lighter red colour. There's a pure yellow one also, quite golden. So those are nice. That's Alternanthera. You can also look at Coprosma. Coprosmas then would be your next stage up, and that would be, and there's all sorts of ones. There's a safari range of Coprosmas that have this beautiful deep reds and sunset colours in it. You can also get marbled ones where they're pure green and white. And then there's the green one also, and they come in all different heights. So you get them from quite low that only grow to about 70 centimetres, and then others that grow, up around the metre 2. People make hedges out of them too. Common name is the mirror bush, and it's used by permaculturists because it doesn't have oil in it. So they used to use it around their farms in the bush especially. And they felt that it, like a deciduous tree does, it stops the sparks and the embers. So if the embers fall onto something like a mirror bush or a coprosma, it doesn't burn. So it can be very, it can assist you. You're not going to have that problem in Wanneroo, but that was just a little bit of information. So look, there's lots and lots of things that you can plant with different foliage colours and certainly get it. And then different foliage shapes. I've seen gardens that are purely green, but the foliage shape has been so different in the different layers of that design that you can actually see, it's a range of things, and it makes it a good depth in the garden. That was the word I was looking for. All right, so I hope that helps you, Lorraine, gives you some advice or gives you some encouragement that there is a possibility to do that. All right, so Tony would like to know, I have a great crop of lemons this year, but they are so big, some are the size of footballs. Goodness me, what can I do to get normal size lemons? Well, you might find that you've got something like not a Eureka, a Lisbon lemon has much bigger lemons on it. I'm wondering if the lemons are good inside or if they've got so big that they've also dried out. I'm wondering what you fed your lemon tree with, Tony, and how much water you gave it. I wouldn't think that water was too much of a problem, because if you overwater, they'll grow too fast and they'll split. And if you've got no splitting on them, then it should be okay. I'm not sure how you get normal sized lemons after you've had such big ones, but often you'll find that a plant will crop an awful lot one year and then the next year. So it's a biennial. Although they crop each year, every second year they have a much bigger crop. Not normally bigger in size, more bigger in amount. But I think that's an interesting question, and I need to have a bit of a look at it and see what would happen. Tony, I need to come back to you with maybe a better question, a better answer at least. All right, Tony, we'll see what we can do for you. Hey, Tyson. Tyson is in Victoria. And can I plant a lithium carpet of snowflower seeds in the ground or somewhere else? And can you give me some tips and advice? Yes, Tyson, you can plant these straight into the ground. They're a very tough little seed. You could plant those now. You can almost in Perth plant them all year round. I probably wouldn't do it in the cold winter. I think you're from, it says Northwest Mandurah. I think you're from Baronia, so there's quite a bit of cold there, quite a bit of frost. Wouldn't do it in the winter time. Good luck with those, Tyson. All right, Albert, and Albert is in East Cannington. He's in WA also. My wife experimented with planting avocado stones on pure tap water, and it worked. She put these in a bright window, and if they receive too much sunlight, they'll get burnt, just like the photos in the way. Thank you, guys. Just like the one shown in the photo. Is there any explanation why these avocados can grow healthy with water and without any fertilizer? How long and how far can they grow and mature in this kind of environment? Is it the same point I need to transplant this to the ground, or will they live happily ever after in these circumstances? Depends what you want to do with them. Now, the leaf looks quite good on them, but when you see the second photo of the leaf and you can see the light coming through them, you can actually see that the veins are slightly darker than the leaf itself. And they're also a little bit wet on the end on one of them. Like it looks like they're not coping too well with that. Look, an avocado can be grown like this. They're a fantastic way to do it, especially for kids to watch too. It's a really good project for them. I wouldn't be leaving an avocado seed in there for too long. There's a lot of things you can. A lot of indoor plants are being grown that way. In fact, my granddaughter, who's 15, is amazing little grower of plants in jars in her room. And it's very easy for them. So it's encouraging young people to grow things too. But back to your avocado. The water looks a bit murky, and what can happen with water is it should really be, when it gets to this point, it should be replaced, and you can put into it a small amount of liquid fertilizer, and that will keep your plant going and growing. Avocado tree, of course, wants to get, most of them are between 4 and 8 meters, some slightly taller even. So I probably wouldn't, and you're not going to get fruit on them inside either. So I would probably plant those out relatively soon and in the right conditions, in the right time. So probably mid-spring to late spring is when I'd do it. And I would put them into a pot and then slowly introduce them to the outside weather. So that if they go from inside to outside really quickly, you might find that it's just too hot for them and the leaves will burn. Of course, doing an avocado like this, the reason why people buy grafted avocados is they fruit within the next couple of years, whereas an avocado that's grown from seed can take anywhere from 10 to 12, sometimes 15 years to actually fruit. But it's a great process anyway. So change your water. You should actually change your water. You've had good luck that it's stayed the way it is. And make sure you get some fertilizer into it if you're going to keep things in a jar. All right, so off to Victoria, and we're in Werribee, and Tamara has asked, I was wondering if you could help me with an issue I have with my grafted fruit tree. I have sprayed it for leaf curl, and now this has happened this season. I will post, she's posted the photo. As you can see, some have the leaf have browned and not developed, and it's fruiting. I'm not sure what else to do. All right, so this looks like a small, quite a young tree, and I would think that what has happened is that through the winter time, the soil, and when the leaves first came out, you might find that the soil was wet, and these leaves again are possibly either underwatered or overwatered. And I'm having to guess because I don't have all the information. So underwatering and overwatering, again, check for if it's underwatered, it's brown and crisp. If it's overwatered, it's soft and brown and soft. The fact that you treated it for leaf curl and sprayed it, I assume you sprayed it with something like copper oxychloride or maybe mancozeb. It may be that you've sprayed it too late with copper oxychloride. The leaf was out already, and therefore it's browned it off like it has. I do know that I can see some small fruit on it. I would be taking the fruit off. The tree should probably be closer to 4 years, 5 years old before you let it fruit. It's just too small for it to cope with it all. So I would take it off, leave the leaves as they are, make sure that you check on the watering, maybe get some mulch onto your soil. Yes, we do. You're in Victoria, so it's probably not as essential straight away to get the soil on, but I would get the mulch on, but I'd get some mulch onto it also so that it survives through the summertime. Otherwise, I think you'll find, let those leaves drop off and you'll find that new leaves grow through. If they don't, then get in touch with your garden centre or come back to us and we'll help you with the next stage. But I think that's what you need to do for the moment. Thanks, Tamara. So now talking about over and under watering, what I've got today is water plants, which don't get overwatered. How good is that? So I wanted to talk a little bit about water plants. It's something that a lot of us don't know a lot about, or maybe haven't experimented, but they're a fabulous way to use them in your ponds or your water features, and to get a really good balanced and natural ecosystem happening. You know, by putting a water plant into a pond where you've got fish or frogs, you're giving it some shade from the sun and also protection from the birds and things that come in, the predator insects. Now, there's a number of different types. I'm going to hold them up one at a time. This one that I've brought in is actually chocolate mint, and it's an edible plant, of course, and you can grow all the mints. There's a lot of edible plants that you can grow in a pond. This one I love. It's chocolate mint. I don't know if you guys have grown it before, but as you finish munching on it, it actually leaves that lovely chocolate flavour in your mouth. So that's an edible plant, and it's just one that's going to help for you. However, I've also brought in a canna. It's rather small, but this is a canna, the Endeavour canna, and it's the tall burgundy foliage, which is really interesting. This is one that I would call a marginal water plant. So you're not going to put this in the middle of your pond. This is the one that you're going to put around the edge of the pond, and it's a natural water filter. So it's going to help filter the water for you and keep it cleaner and help the fish adapt into their environment. You can also grow natives. in. So this is an Australian native, and it's a milfoil. So it's got this beautiful little ferny type foliage that you can then grow. And this one will love to float. So we've got, in a pond, you've got deep water plants, you've got deep water oxygenators, marginal water plants, deep marginal, shallow or bog marginal, and floating plants. This is a floating plant. And one of the things that the garden centres we sell is these little floaters. So all you do is pop your plant into this. In fact, this plant is in a double pot, so it's not going to sit on properly. The double pot is that when you buy it from the garden centre, this pot here on the outside actually has no holes, and there's water in here. And then you've got this other plant, the other one sits underneath it. Let me see if I can get it out easily. No, I'm not going to. Anyway, this is slightly smaller, obviously, and these floaters then sit up at the top of the pot, and the pot will float really nicely on the surface for you. And of course, then the plant just goes out into the water, throws roots down, and continues to get bigger and bigger. Some of the plants you can't float are some like your marginal plants. These ones you want to put on the margins, and these will sit on the higher part of the margins. So the marginal water plants, we call those, rather than the deep marginal. Now you can either plant these into the soil in the pond or into pockets of soil, or even if you're looking at deep marginal plants that want to be really low, you can always put those with gravel around the bottom of them. So you take them out of the pot, keep the soil on them, and then have some heavy gravel around the bottom, and that'll hold them on the bottom of the pond. A lot of people use water lilies, and they're stunning, but they don't like moving water. Most others, like, you know, your edible, your mints, and the red foil that I just showed you, they will sit in water where you've got a water feature where the water is moving, and they'll deal with it, they'll cope with it. But a water lily will not. So you want it in a nice still pond, or even I've seen them growing in just really beautiful vessels like wine barrels. Work really well. Often people will grow them at the side of their patio for that sort of reason. So don't put a water lily into a moving pond. You can use other things like even duckweed, right? That is really good, and it's good for covering the surface. So again, it's a protector for the fish underneath, so the birds don't come in and grab them. Water plants have very little pests that attack them. They're usually really tough and quite low maintenance, but of course, if they flower, you can have the opportunity. The aphids will take the opportunity to come onto those. So look out for aphids, but otherwise, most things will really grow around a pond well. There's nothing nicer than a really beautiful pond planted out with flowers coming up at different times, different coloured foliage, and different heights. So yeah, get down to your garden centre and have a look at pond plants, and hopefully you'll enjoy those as well. All right, so that's my plant of the week today. And now we're going to move on, and we're going to have a sneak peek at tomorrow's episode of the Garden Gurus, episode number 6. Enjoy.
It seems like everywhere you look in the garden, there's new foliage emerging and beautiful flowers like on this cherry tree here. And now's a great time to establish new garden beds, plant some plants, fix your soil, so rejuvenate your soil, and fertilise the garden.
I'm a bit of a fresh food fanatic. I'm going to show you a system of growing food at home that anyone can do that will give you that same freshness.
Hi, I'm Brendan Peng, and today I'm making a Chinese steamed eggplant with a spicy garlic sauce using these eggplants straight from Trev's garden. What I love so much about eggplant is that it is very spongy, it takes on so much flavour, and that's exactly what we're going to do today.
I'll be watching that one. I'd love to get that recipe. Okay, so make sure you tune in tomorrow afternoon. Check your TV guide for when it'll be on in your state. So let's get back to some more questions. And remember to include your state if you could. It helps me a lot. So Amanda is in Yanchep, which is north of Perth. It's this beautiful little spot right on the coast. So Amanda's wanting to get some information on how to grow her own veggies. So far, she's failing miserably, and she's tried a portable trough. She had lettuce and capsicum growing well, but it died the next day after feeding them with power feed. I've been trying for many years with minimal success. Please help. Absolutely happy to help you, Amanda. Veggie gardens are not hard if you get the foundation right and plant the right vegetables at the right time. So what you're looking for is really good soil, all right? It's like anything. Raising children, building a house, anything that you need a good foundation on, if you plant it in a good foundation, you're going to get good products from it generally. So if you're in Perth, I'm sure you've got some very good soil providers in Yanchep or close by. But if you are in Perth, I'd suggest that you go and visit the Green Life Soil Company. They have amazing soil and they have some really good veggie mixes. Even if you rang and had a chat with them about it, about their soil mix, and the next time you're down, just grab a few bags. In fact, they sell it by the bag load at quite a few garden centres. So you could always ring the Green Life and find out from them where they sell close to you. So I would suggest that you need some very good soil. You want to make sure that it's not hydrophobic soil, that it does take the moisture in and hold the moisture at the root system where it's required. And make sure that you get some very good mulch also. It's starting to get warm already in Perth and our gardens will need mulch. So I can't reiterate that enough. All right. So then depending on when you did sowed the lettuce and the capsicum, hopefully that wasn't through the winter time because that would be very hard. You can't grow capsicum in the winter time. They will die off. And if you fed them with power feed and then they died the next day, withered up, I would suggest that you probably overfed them. So maybe look at half-strength power feed or a liquid fertilizer, and that would certainly help. Just make sure that you've got really good soil, that you understand what needs to be grown in the season that you're growing in. Keep the water up to it, but don't overwater it, all right? So use your fingers, put your fingers down into the soil. If it's moist, don't water, even if it's a hot day. And keep in mind too that plants do wilt, right? And often the wilting that they do is to show that in fact they're just hot and therefore they're going to drop their leaves down and they cover their stems and they protect them from the sun. So don't be too quick to go out with your watering can or your hose in the middle of the day and start watering things that are showing that they're wilting. It may be that by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, you'll see their leaves will come back up again and they'll be okay. Just test the soil and then water. Don't just look at the plant, look at the foundation. So I hope that helps you with your veggie garden. Thanks for the question, Amanda. I really appreciate it. And we have Karen. Okay, so Karen recently saw a product being used on the Garden Gurus TV show for slugs and snails. It was a blue powder in a bottle, which they mixed in a watering can and poured around the base of a raised garden bed. Could you please tell me the name of the product and whether it can be used directly on my plants? We are being inundated by slugs in the garden with all the wet weather and they're decimating my garden. Yeah, they are. They're doing the same at my place. Or have been. A little bit drier now and I've managed to get hold of them. Now, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure which product that was. It may well be, and I think Trevor's back next week, so we'll put it to him and ask him to get the actual name of the product for you. There's a few different products that can be used, though, for snails and slugs, and eco products can be used. There's one called Ecoshield, and that is a liquid that you can put on. So it may well be that it was Ecoshield that was on the program. Then there's Multiguard. Multiguard is an iron-based slug and snail repellent or killer. It is an iron, and it's a potable iron. So if you put some on your plants and you find that it rains, they will actually dissolve down into the soil, but they don't hurt the soil. In fact, quite the opposite. They add minerals, they add iron to your soil. So it's not a bad thing to happen. Then the other thing, the only time that that's going to be dangerous to your pets is if you leave them out and your medium-sized dog, say, eats around about 600 grams of them. So it's really often, I say to people, snail pellets, there's some dangerous ones out there, which I don't use, I don't sell. But there is also some that are quite safe, that can be used around animals, but you just need to be aware of how to use them. Don't put clumps of them everywhere. You know, if you were saying one kangaroo paw, put 5 little pellets around them, and that's all it needs. Okay. Otherwise, animals can get curious. And there's often in the eco ones, or in the ones that are not poisonous, they often have a bran in them that can attract certain animals to it. The one thing with Multiguard that I like is that if a bird came, for argument's sake, and picked up a snail or slug that was dying from it, it's not going to affect the bird. Okay. So iron affects blue-blooded animals, which is why it's good for slugs and snails. The other one that it may have been, and I'm guessing, all right, but the other one it may have been is a product called copper oxychloride, which is actually a fungicide. But many years ago, I was told by a very good permaculturalist that what they use it for is the little tiny conical snails that have come into Perth. We call them common name Italian snails, and they're very tiny and they're conical shaped, unlike the round normal garden snail that you'd be aware of. You have to find where they're living, and you then put the copper over them, and they dislike the copper, and that's what happens. So they then die from that. You can protect your plants with copper also. I know you can buy some copper tape and put that round pots to stop slugs coming up over the tape also, because they don't like the copper. It burns. So maybe have a look at Ecoshield, Multiguard, copper oxychloride if you've got those little Italian snails. Otherwise, we'll get Trevor, we'll write that down and so that we don't forget. And we'll get Trevor to maybe explain it a bit further if it was a product that I'm not aware of. Okay. Now we're off to Gray in Victoria, and Gray he's pictured here, a Leighton green conifer that's browning. It seems to be whenever it rains heavily. I've trimmed and removed one plant, though it still appears, however, not as much lately. Will this correct itself over summer? What else can I do? All right, so it does look like you've got a bit of browning in the tips there, doesn't it, at the top? You know, if it's through the winter time and it's overly wet, that can cause some fungal issues. You know, conifers can be attacked by bugs, by fungal and bacterial. So I think you need to be aware that if it's bacterial or fungal, then it needs to be taken out. It doesn't look to me like it's conifer canker, which is something that once it's taken over a quarter of your plant, you're virtually best just to get rid of it so it doesn't spread through the rest of them. You can also tip prune and take out those bits of brown. If the browning happens to be lower down where it's then showing up and you get this big gap in your tree, you can actually tie one branch, take the brown off, and you can tie one branch to another branch, and it'll start filling out that area that you want to fill in the gap with. So that can happen. You can also get what they call a needle blight, and it just affects the needles of the plant, the leaves, as opposed to the stems, and you'll be able to tell that when you look at it. And the treatment for that is copper oxychloride also. So I would trim them off. If it keeps happening and you get more than a quarter, I'd take it down to your garden centre and get them to have a really close look at for bugs or maybe for a fungal thing. If it's bacterial, it's bad news. You just need to get rid of them. I'm not sure if it's going to repair itself over summertime. I don't know that it's completely just about the water, and it's certainly not about the rain. I've seen these growing in the mountains of, Canada, and they're in 30 foot of snow, and they're still growing, and they would be really overwatered in that case. So I'm not sure that it's just that. It could well be something else. Good luck with that, Gray. All right, we're going down to Mandurah now. And April lives in Mandurah. Mandurah is a beautiful little coastal town south, or city, I think it's a town still, down just south of Perth. It's a beautiful little tourist spot. And April lives there, and she's asked, how do you make sand into soil using 3 ingredients? I remember sand, mulch, but I forgot the other ingredient. What am I missing? Okay, so sand is often the base. In fact, sand is easier to deal with than clay is to start with. To turn clay into soil is a long-term project. So you're kind of lucky that you've got this silica sand that we have here in Perth. Silica sand is a very sharp sand, and it's something that you need to add some ingredients to if you're wanting to build up your worms and microbes in it too, because it can often just it can often scratch the worms or as they move through it, and then they will die from it. So it's a good idea to get some other ingredients into it as well. As far as the 3 ingredients go, well, you'd use the sand that you've got, and then I would, yes, use mulch on the top, but I would be using some compost into it to turn it into a more friable soil. Okay, so go down and get yourself some really good compost. And I don't mean, don't go and buy a $3 bag of something. It's not composted well. It's not going to treat your soil well. Go and invest in some good compost and put that in and mix it in with your sand, and you'll find that'll work well. And yes, keep in mind that you want to put some mulch on top of that. And I like to see, about 4 centimeters of mulch on top. Really helps. You'll find that over the time it will become more and more friable. You might want to also consider what you're feeding into your soil. So try using a mineral fertilizer, and that way you're adding minerals into your soil, which will stay there for some time. You can use rock dust. That certainly helps also. But yeah, that should, again, it's a great question, April, because if, as I said before, if you don't have a good foundation in your garden, then you're always going to be battling with either pests and diseases or plants dying from, drying out, things like that. So make sure that you get your foundation correct, and it'll be much easier to grow everything. Thanks, April. Great question. All right, so now we're up into the hills of Parkerville. We're really in WA today. That's fantastic. Parkerville, and Greg has asked, what are your thoughts on solarizing onion weed in a veggie bed, as we don't want to spray? We are trying clear plastic first rather than black, just seeing what you think. All right, so look, onion weed is one of those things. When people come into the garden centre and ask me how to get onion weed, I usually say to them, if you like a glass of wine, put a glass of wine in this hand and put a trowel in this hand, and in between have a whole lot of patience, because it's very hard to get rid of onion weed. You could solarize it, but what you are going to do, of course, you can't grow veggies while you're doing it, but you also can kill a lot of the microbes in the soil when you do that. So it would be interesting to see how well it goes, because as far as I've only ever been able to sieve it out, right? I dig them out, I use a sieve, and I dig way below where I think they're going to be, because as soon as you start digging out an onion weed, all the little babies just pop off it, and the next thing, from 1 you've got 10. So yeah, make sure that you if you're going to dig them out, if the solarizing doesn't work, make sure you dig nice and deep. Otherwise, if you solarize and you do get good results, that's great, and I'd love to know about it, about your results. what you want to be able to do also is add some more microbes into the soil. So get some of Sabrina Hahn's spreadable microbes, use something like Grow Safe, get the minerals back in, or even just some good rock dust in there, because the plastic will in fact kill all the microbes and the good living things in your soil. Right, so yeah, get back to us, Greg. I'd love to know if that works on your onion weed. It might be a lot better than drinking a whole bottle while you're trying to get rid of them. Okay, Dell. And Dell is in Perth, but I have just ordered dahlias from Garden Express, but in our sandy soils in Perth, is there a special potting mix I need to use so they will be in the ground? Look, Dell, that's really great. Good on you. I think it's such a deal. You can't miss out there. Yes, so it sounds to me like you're in sandy soils, not in a clay soil. And what I would do is remember, potting mix is for pots. It's not for the ground. Potting mix is made up of around about 67% sand. So what you're doing is taking coals to Newcastle and you're adding to your sand. You're putting sand into sand. All right. And it also has an aeration that's too much. You want to have something that's going to hold the moisture in the soil better. So I would use a concentrate or a compost. Thank you. So a compost in that maybe 1/3 of the size of the hole that you dig. And if your tubers, they looked huge actually. If your tubers are about 150 or 15 centimeters wide, make sure you double the size of the hole and double the depth, and put in a third of the size of that whole compost and mix it in with your sandy soils, and that should really help. And it's interesting that David said that you can certainly leave these in the ground, and I have every faith in David. He knows exactly what he's doing. But I would also suggest, if you live somewhere in Perth where it's just very, very hot, or your garden bed gets an awful lot of sun, make sure you get mulch on. It's going to be my catchphrase for the next few weeks: mulch everything. So put some mulch over it. I hope you really enjoy those, Del. I know you will. Okay, Nicole. What is the name of the second flower from Garden Express? I believe it was a hippeastrum. Yes, it is. It's a hippeastrum, and I cannot remember the other name. It started with S, and it had something to do with the shape of the leaf and the flower. It has very pointed flowers. But if you go onto the Garden Express website in the next couple of days, it will be up there. And it's well worth it if you are a collector of hippeastrums, or if you just like something rare and unusual, or something as beautiful as that one was, then grab one. They're not going to be cheap. They certainly won't have a special on them. David would have taken anything from, say, 3 to 7 years to actually get that plant into his nursery where he can start growing it on. And then there would have been a number of maybe another year or two where he then was building up the stock so he can sell them on. So as he said, there's only 20. Get in there fast, Nicole. All right, back into Melbourne, and we're in West Melbourne, and Matthew has asked, what is a good ground cover that can survive the odd car or two driving over it? We'll get full sun and it will be on our verge. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we could mention there. There's one that a woman that used to work with me, Robin. Robin had this amazing property out in the valley, and she had what I thought at the time was like 100 grandchildren. And they would come and visit her a lot. And she had a whole, I think, over an acre of garden. And all the pathways were made with this little plant called Diamondia. It's a very flat growing ground cover, and it's as tough as can be. So, and you can walk on it all the time. Then you could also look at, there is one called Convolvulus. And Convolvulus you can walk on, but probably not if you've got high traffic, okay? High traffic, I'd go back to something like a Diamondia, or even in some areas you'll find Dichondra will work well for you. as well. Lipia is probably one of the toughest that you'll find. Now, if Lipia is growing in a bit of shade, it gets quite high. Not high as in perennial high or, you know, flower high. It will be thicker and will raise maybe 3 centimetres off the ground. Otherwise, it's very tough. It will run into your garden beds. You need to, if it's on the verge, it's going to be fine. And it mows, so you can mow the flowers off it if you don't want. It comes with a pink flower or a white flower. There's 2 different types, and it grows very fast. So you don't need to buy 100 pots to cover your verge. You can grow it quite fast from it, and you can, once it starts running, I let it then root down in, and you can take cuttings off that by digging the whole of the new root out and then placing that into the next part of the garden or the next part of your verge as you've got it. So yeah, that would be really good. So I hope that helps you, Matthew. Probably driving, I would say Lipia would be your best, then Diamondia. All right, so we're off to the ACT. And we've got a very quick question. I planted this Emperor Mandarin years ago. It always has heaps of fruit, but they're always dry inside no matter what I do. Fertilize, water, sulfate of potash, Epsom salts, please help. It's how you fertilize, when you fertilize, little more often for citrus. And also I would suggest that you need to watch your watering. Okay, so don't overwater, don't underwater, or they can be quite dry. And I would fertilize with a mineral fertilizer. And as I said, little more often. Epsom salts is fine, but Epsom salts is like taking a vitamin D tablet as opposed to being out in the sunshine and absorbing it correctly. And I'm sorry, Shirley, we've answered that one really fast because it's time for us to go. Look, make sure you hit the like button. Thanks for joining us today. And apologies if we didn't reach the question, your question, but it's been lovely answering those who we could get to and being back with you all again. Jess, our great producer here, will send a message to all our seed winners after today's show. And we'll be back on Friday at 9 p.m. Western Standard Time. Remember, you can always jump onto our website and catch up on our previous stories from the Garden Gurus at thegardengurus.tv, or your TV channel, your YouTube channel, and that's also thegardengurus.tv. Also, please make sure you tune in for the 6th episode of The Garden Gurus tomorrow, airing on Channel 9 on Saturday, and be sure to check your local guides for times. Happy gardening, everyone. Thoroughly enjoyed today. I hope we were of some help to you. Thanks a lot.
Still is Australia's most trusted brand of garden power tools, backed by 95 years of German engineering excellence. To get your hands on their range, visit your local Still dealer today or visit still.com.au.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.